Morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
Yes, we made it to the end of the week. I'm Savannah Sellers, and we begin this morning with the resignation of Maui's top emergency management official. This comes as Hawaii's response to the massive wildfires continues to be called into question.
His name is Herman Andaya, and his resignation is effective immediately. He's citing health reasons. The resignation came one day after he defended his decision not to sound warning sirens as those wildfires swept across the island. Andaya feared that coastal residents would have fled inland toward the flames if sirens were used. Public safety meeting records show that Andaya had a pattern of downplaying the importance of Hawaii's emergency siren system. During meetings between 2019 and 2021, he repeatedly called the sirens a last resort. At least 111 people were killed in the wildfires. As the cleanup continues, volunteers are coming together to help those impacted by the fires. These families are now in the very early stages of recovery.
The families are healing, you know, and it's a touchy situation right now, because for us as a community, of course, we're happy that we have our homes, but our heart aches because that's our other neighbors and our families.
NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the latest from Hawaii.
Good morning. Citing health concerns, Herman Andaya has resigned. He's Maui County's top emergency response official. He was under intense scrutiny for not sounding the alarm as that wildfire broke out. He said he didn't sound that alarm because many people would have thought it was a tsunami warning, and he feared folks would have actually went from the ocean up into the hills where the wildfire was burning. Meantime, Hawaiian Electric faces multiple lawsuits for their possible role in this wildfire. That is still obviously under investigation. Authorities say that this fire may have been sparked by downed power lines. It's one avenue that they're looking at. Meantime, 111 bodies have been recovered so far. That death toll could continue to rise. The search area is roughly halfway searched. Authorities say they still have a long ways to go before they figure out how many more people died in this tragedy. Back to you.
Miguel Almaguer, thank you so much.
We're now joined by Alexa Kasky, a resident of Lahaina and the owner of the Moku Roots vegan restaurant there. She's been helping in the relief efforts taking place around the island that is her home. Alexa, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, especially while you're going through all this. We understand that your business was spared from the brunt of the wildfires, but talk to us about what your experience has been like over this past week, what you've seen happen with family and friends firsthand.
Hi. Yeah, fortunately, our restaurant was spared. The shopping center that we're in is one of the only places that's still standing in Lahaina, but 9 of 20 of our employees' houses have burned down, and that's, you know, pretty on par with, I would say, about the percentage of people in Lahaina who've lost homes in general. So I've been we don't have power or water at Moku Roots right now, so I've been like organizing housing for people and trying to do that from the other side of the island where I have internet and I'm useful right now.
Yeah, that's amazing that you are working so hard to help people by helping them with the short-term housing. Explain to us what that looks like, how you're doing it, and how that has been going so far.
Sure. Well, it all just started with like a little spreadsheet on my computer that then one of my friends got up on a website he had put together that has a number of resources. That's helpmauifire.com, and then /housing for the housing. There's short-term and long-term options on there.
The need must be incredibly great, I'm guessing.
Definitely. And fortunately, I think a lot of the hotels have started opening up, although I've tried to call many of them to confirm and they're not answering. But what I've heard is people just go by and their spare rooms are available for people displaced.
Yeah, and the website that y'all have set it up is really so easy to use in order to just click into and see what's available, which I know is part of what's really tough right now, is just understanding. As these relief efforts continue, what do you want people to know about what you need, what those around you need, and what your business might need, especially as you're hoping, I understand, to open up and ramp up to be able to serve other people, just to give food to people who need meals?
Well, we're going to need power and water, which is not, anybody from afar's within their scope of abilities. But right now, I think families just need funding that have lost everything to try to rebuild and, buy a new one of everything that they have owned and lost. So there is, like, on our Instagram page at Mocha Roots, there is a link to all the GoFundMes, the personal GoFundMes and Venmos that have been put together by somebody, I'm not sure, but that does have like every single family's GoFundMe or Venmo that will get them money immediately. And that is available from our Instagram page.
Alexa, it's just incredible that while you're dealing with this happening in your home as well, you're helping other people. We appreciate your time this morning, and we'll check in with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now to the latest on Hurricane Hilary. We're tracking the powerful Category 4 storm expected to send some heavy rain to the West Coast.
And that's right. Angie Lastman is here in studio with us with the details. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. You heard that right. West Coast. Normally, when we're talking about the hurricane season, especially during August, it's Atlantic focused, Gulf of Mexico focused. We're talking about the Pacific Ocean, though, and just this monster of a storm that has continued to rapidly intensify over such a short period of time. Now a Category 4 with winds up to 145 miles per hour. It's moving northwest just off the coast of Mexico at about a speed of 13 miles per hour, headed towards the Baja California Peninsula. That's where it's going to see the first impacts. And then eventually down the line, the southwestern portions of the United States are going to see some impacts, specifically in the form of rain. We could see some wind impacts, but let's talk about where we go between now and then. Notice Category 4 still as we get into the overnight hours tonight. This is really warm water right here, especially on the eastern side of the peninsula right there. That's temperatures, water temperatures 85 and higher. On the western side, we get into really much colder waters. We're talking about a temperature difference between the waters of 20 degrees. And you can see what it does to the system. Weakens it significantly. We're talking 100-mile-per-hour winds by Sunday at 12 a.m. As it starts to make landfall in Mexico first and then eventually cross the border into California, it'll significantly weaken. But that doesn't mean that the impacts as far as heavy rain go away. We're still going to see that working in parts of the southwestern region of the United States, bringing heavy rain and really ample amounts of rain in a short period of time, where flooding will be a major concern for folks here. We're talking Los Angeles, San Diego, Las Vegas. The timing of when that system actually crosses the border from Mexico into California looks to be late Sunday into early Monday. And really, it's not so much about whether it's a tropical storm or a low or whatever it is. It's more about what comes with it, and it's going to be a whole lot of rain that comes with it. Here's the flash flooding concerns for Saturday. You can see kind of the bullseye area with the moderate risk is focused into parts of California, stretching into Arizona, but places like Las Vegas, San Diego, Palm Springs, Phoenix all have a pretty good chance of seeing some impressive rainfall with the precipitable water values, or basically just how much moisture is going to be in that atmosphere. We could tap into really impressive rainfall rates up to 3 inches of rain in places like Nevada. And you can see it with our rainfall forecast from Saturday into Tuesday. Localized amounts 5 to 8 inches, but we could see on some sides of the mountains isolated up to 10 inches of rain falling in a short period of time. So we will be really concerned about flooding in this area through at least the next couple of days. How about the winds? I mentioned that we could see a difference in that tropical system, whether it's a hurricane or a tropical storm or a low. It looks like the winds are more of a Mexico concern. We're going to see maybe some gusty conditions. The likelihood of us seeing tropical storm force winds in Southern California, not great, but we could see maybe a couple of gusts there as we get into Monday and Tuesday. We'll start to see things winding down, but it's really going to be the rain that I want people to focus on for folks over there in parts of the Southwest. And otherwise, unfortunately, for people in the Southwest, you look to the East Coast and it's just going to be a great kind of weekend for Saturday, even Sunday. It'll be hot in the middle of the country with, no surprise here, more record heat possible, triple digits across Texas. But as far north as the Central Plains and even the Midwest could see really uncomfortable conditions for Sunday plans, but some serious flooding ongoing for folks in the Southwest here as we get into Saturday, Sunday, and potentially Monday.
All right, Angie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Former President Donald Trump is looking to delay his federal 2020 election interference trial until well after next year's election. In a court filing, Trump's attorneys recommended starting the trial in April 2026. Now, that's more than 2 years after prosecutors wanted to get the trial underway. They say special counsel Jack Smith's timeline denies Trump, quote, a fair ability to prepare for trial. The prosecution argues its proposed start date of January 2024 reflects, quote, the public's strong interest in a speedy trial. The judge is expected to set a trial date at an August 28th hearing. Trump has pleaded not guilty to the charges.
A high-stakes trial in Mississippi came to an abrupt end after a judge declared a mistrial because of withheld evidence. The case centers on two white men who are accused of shooting at a Black FedEx worker as he tried to deliver a package to a house. Now, the family of that employee is calling on the Justice Department to investigate. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch reports.
Outrage in Mississippi. A judge declaring a mistrial in the case of two white men accused of trying to murder DeMontario Gibson, a Black FedEx driver who had just made a delivery.
And with great reluctance, the court has no choice in this matter but to grant the motion for a mistrial.
Gibson's mother escorted from court after Judge David Strong's ruling, a day after a police officer admitted to withholding evidence. Brookhaven Police Detective Vincent Fernando saying under oath that authorities had taken a videotaped statement from Gibson, but did not share it with either the defense or prosecution, as was required.
The failure to turn over matters in discovery is just something that can't be ignored. In 17 years, I don't think I've ever seen it happen, but it happened here.
A mistrial is a major hiccup for the prosecution, but all in all, a second trial really saps the resources of the defense more than the state.
Brookhaven police have not responded to NBC News' request for comment. Gibson says in January 2022, he made a delivery in his FedEx uniform and was driving a Hertz van with the rental company's markings when Gregory Case and his son Brandon allegedly chased and shot at him. Gregory Case's attorney says his client only planned to ask the driver what was happening outside his mother-in-law's home, but the driver did not stop. Gibson believes he was chased because he's Black. In a statement, Gibson's attorney calling the mistrial a delay in justice, calling on the Department of Justice to investigate the Brookhaven Police Department. Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
Let's turn to some financial news now. Well, it's no secret that buying a home has become a tough and expensive process.
That's because the 30-year fixed-rate mortgages have reached their highest point now in more than 20 years. It's the most popular home loan in America. Freddie Mac says the rate for that loan is now over 7%, up from 5% this time last year. Let's bring in Caleb Silver. He is the editor-in-chief at Investopedia. Caleb, good morning. So what's the impact of these high mortgage rates? Does it mean for people who can't pay cash that home ownership is kind of out of reach right now?
Absolutely. Home affordability is at its worst level in 4 decades. Why? Because of these rising mortgage rates, but also home prices have stayed very high because there's very little inventory out there. Nobody wants to sell and get into a new mortgage over 7%, and nobody that wants to buy in their first-time home can afford that 7% mortgage. That's a lot of money.
You mentioned low inventory. Why is that? Why are people holding on to their homes and not selling them?
For that very reason. You don't want to sell out of your home. Most people have a mortgage that's under 6%, so they don't want to go out into the market and get a new home at over 7%, plus the median price for a home now about $420,000. If you were to buy a $500,000 home, put $100,000 down, your monthly payment, $3,400. That is a lot for first-time home buyers.
So if you are looking to either buy or sell right now, what is your best advice? Is maybe now not the time to do that?
Well, you got to live somewhere. So if you need to buy a home to live somewhere, do it. But cash is king right now. So if you have an all-cash offer, you're going to have a much better opportunity. Also, pool some money with friends. Developers are also offering financing to potential clients as well in lieu of banks. They may get a better deal that way because banks right now are giving you 7%. If your credit's bad, you're looking at 8%.
So for people who are looking ahead a year or two down the road, I mean, what's the likelihood the rates start to drop on the 30-year? Depends on what the Fed does, right?
Depends on what the Fed does. So the Fed is expected to start cutting rates next year. I would look to next spring to see mortgage rates come down and maybe some affordability start to broaden out into the market right now. Very tough for first-time home buyers, very tough for sellers right now, too.
When we see sort of this mixed bag, it feels like we talk about some good news sometimes and then some tougher news. It's still so hard to buy a home. What does that ultimately mean right now for the American consumer at home?
Yeah, well, we're pretty stretched. That credit card debt is very high. Mortgage rates and debt is very high right now. That said, we are continuing to spend. We're going to see how long that lasts. We got student loan payments coming back in about a month or two. We still have inflation around, so it's a tough time for consumers.
All right, Caleb Silver, as always, we appreciate you. Thanks.
This morning, President Biden is welcoming the leaders of Japan and South Korea at Camp David. It's the first trilateral summit between those nations.
The president hopes the meeting will project an image of unity between the countries amid growing tensions with regional rivals North Korea and China. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker joins us from Washington, and our foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us from Beijing. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for being here. So, Kristen, I'll start with you. Just walk us through what we can expect from today's summit. What kind of agreements might we see? What type of discussion is expected to be had?
Well, Savannah and Joe, good morning to both of you. We are looking for some deliverables. As you say, this is a significant summit. It's the first between these three nations, and it's really aimed at being a show of force in the face of an increasingly aggressive China and new missile threats by North Korea, including growing concerns Russia could be helping North Korea advance its nuclear arsenal. Now, the three leaders are expected to announce new annual military exercises and new intelligence sharing agreements, including what's being called a three-way hotline to communicate during a crisis. It's also the first time President Biden is hosting foreign leaders at Camp David, a hugely significant venue. Of course, it's the site of critical diplomatic negotiations in the past, you guys.
So, Janice, we know Japan and South Korea have a historically bumpy relationship. Help us understand why that is, and then what are some of the steps both countries have taken recently to try and mend those relations?
Very uneasy history. Relations between Seoul and Tokyo have been shaped by decades of resentment and mistrust that go back to Japan's occupation of the Korean Peninsula. Now, there have been steps made towards reconciliation, much of it credited to South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was elected last year. He met in March with Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. That's the first meeting of its kind in 12 years. They're hashing out a deal to settle claims of forced labor. The issue that both men are facing is that there's not widespread support in their countries for all of these reconciliation efforts. So a big challenge facing them, their own domestic political environments, which is also a factor for President Biden.
Kristen, how big of a deal is this? How much of a coup is this for the Biden administration to actually get these two countries together under the same roof, given their bitter history? What does it ultimately mean for the White House, for the Biden administration?
Well, from a foreign policy perspective, this is hugely significant for all of the reasons that Janice laid out. The fact that there are these long-standing tensions between Japan and South Korea. The venue really, I think, speaks to this. One senior administration official telling us yesterday Camp David was chosen quite carefully. I think there's a recognition that venue is reserved for only the most important and significant such meetings. This administration official citing, of course, summits that were held there at the end of the Second World War, the Camp David peace accords under former President Bill Clinton. So the venue is of huge significance, and of course there is a lot on the docket today. This is a region that the Biden administration is increasingly engaged with, making this pivot toward Asia again as they are dealing with a rising China and new aggressions by North Korea, guys.
Janice, we like to say the world is watching. That includes North Korea and China. How are they viewing this summit? Any reaction from those countries?
Well, North Korea continues to develop and advance its weapons program. It recently tested a solid fuel ICBM, which is not something they've done before. China, for its part, is highly critical of this summit that's happening. In state media, they're characterizing it as a mini NATO-style alliance. And this is where South Korea and Japan are going to have to tread very carefully.
Janice and Kristen, thank you both very much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.